Chapter 498, 10 Days of Hell. While Ling Lei and the rest were busily capturing the Nangong family members, Li Zhu stood behind the despairing Nangong Yu. Looking at the look of despair on her face, Li Zhu mocked with ridicule, "Miss Nangong, I really have to thank all of you. Your idiocy and unreasonable jealousy caused you and your subordinates to become a whetstone for us to groom an outstanding leader for our Ling family courtyard. Do you see that? When all of your dog lives disappear, the effect that I want will be fully displayed. While all of you are pathetically weak, the effect of your lives is truly enormous. This is something that you should definitely be proud of." Nangong Yu breathed heavily as she glared at Li Zhu with despair. She then growled with hatred, "Using my life as a whetstone? You must be dreaming." Peng! Li Zhu's foot shot towards Nangong Yu's chin and the sound of bones breaking could be heard. Nangong Yu's chin was shattered by Li Zhu's kick and she was unable to commit suicide by biting her tongue. Following that, Li Zhu kicked Nangong Yu's inner core and her chilly inner chi flooded into Nangong Yu's inner core, causing it to explode. Li Zhu then said chilly, "You will definitely walk down the Yellow Springs, but there isn't a need for you to rush. I will keep you alive until Ling Chen kills you. If she doesn't want to kill you, even if you cannot hope to be alive, you definitely cannot die. How can I not make good use of the last big present that your Nangong family gave me?" Ignoring Nangong Yu's look of despair, Li Zhu crossed over her body and spat out coldly, "Take them away." At this moment, Ling Chen, who was off to the side, opened her eyes, and a complicated look could be seen in her gaze. She looked at the dismembered body parts in front of her, which was her doing, and the hellish scene in front of her. Her lips and body began trembling, but Ling Chen resolutely chose to keep her eyes open and refused to look away. Li Zhu was right. In fact, she was also extremely clear about that truth. Would she want to bring disaster to her most beloved man just because of her soft-heartedness? In this chaotic world, one will either kill or be killed. If Ling Chen didn't want any harm to fall upon her brothers and beloved man, she could only harden her heart and face the world. Young Noble and Ling Jian had already shouldered too much for me over the many years. They had already been drenched in blood far too many times. Could it be that I, Ling Chen, will have to hide behind their backs forever? Can I not stand in front of them for once? Ling Chen's face turned paler and paler, but her eyes grew more and more resolute. The trembling of her body gradually stopped and she held the sword in her right hand tighter and tighter. Li Zhu let out a heave of relief. It seemed like Ling Chen had already thought things through and taken her first step out. Everything else was only a matter of time. After the next 10 days, a brand new Ling Chen would definitely be before their eyes. This was something that Li Zhu was extremely confident of. The actions of Ling Lei and the others were undoubtedly swift. In just a short few minutes, not to mention the battle scars, not even a drop of blood could be seen. If someone were to pass by here right now, they would definitely not expect that a battle had just taken place. In the next 10 days, the whole courtyard suddenly turned silent. In those 10 days, a huge and clear change occurred in this silence. It was a change that could not be stopped. The first day, Li Zhu stood outside Ling Chen's door early in the morning and chased her into the stone chamber where the Nangong family members were being held captive as though she was a criminal. The 10 people in the stone chamber were the 10 people that Ling Chen had to take care of for the day. After Ling Chen entered the cave, Li Zhu mercilessly closed the thick door of the cave. After a full 6 hours, Ling Chen finally walked out of the cave with a pale expression and trembling body. Her whole body was drenched in sweat, and the moment she walked out of the cave, she began vomiting incessantly to the point her gastric juices were vomited out. Following Ling Chen's exit, a few people entered the room swiftly and 10 bloody corpses were carried out. Ling Jian was clad in black robes as he looked at the stone chamber expressionlessly and silently. However, his fists were clenched tightly to the point his veins protruded and turned green. While he felt heartache for Ling Chen, He knew that this was something that Ling Chen had to go through. This vicious and vile Li Zhu. She deserves to be taught a lesson. To think that she would actually treat Last Chen as such. She actually had the heart to do something that both the young noble and I can't bear to do. At this moment, Ling Tian truly did not know whether he should thank or hate Li Zhu. He was filled with contradiction. Today, Ling Chen did not eat a single thing, and she felt dizzy for the whole day. She woke up from her dreams multiple times and began puking before falling back asleep. She would then wake up again, start puking again before falling asleep again. Such a cycle continued for the whole day. The second day, when Li Zhu arrived at Ling Chen's doorstep, the extremely frail Ling Chen, who was emotionally and mentally drained, opened the door and walked out of her room on her own. She held her sword in her hands, and after both the ladies looked at each other for a moment, Li Zhu led the way to the stone chamber. As Ling Chen walked into the stone chamber unsteadily, there were another 10 people in the cave, 10 people who were about to enter the Yellow Springs. 2 hours later, Ling Chen exited the stone chamber, and despite wanting to puke, she managed to control herself from doing so. She immediately rushed back into the room and collapsed onto her bed. The third day, Ling Chen, who had slept for a full day, finally drank 2 bowls of porridge. When she left her room, Li Zhu stood in her courtyard coldly and had a stare down with Ling Tian, who was at a distance. The 5th day, Li Zhu was no longer waiting in front of Ling Chen's door but at the entrance of the stone chamber. Seeing Ling Chen's arrival, her eyes lit up and she asked, "You're here?" These words of hers were said with a profound tone. Be it Li Zhu who was asking the question, Ling Chen who was about to answer the question, or Ling Tian and the rest who were by the side, they all understood the true meaning of these words. Ling Chen's face was chilly as her muscles contorted slightly. However, her eyes were filled with resolution and she replied calmly, "I have to come eventually." In her tone, a faint tinge of grievance and resentment could be heard. The mission today was completed with great difficulty. Ling Chen only managed to walk out of the stone chamber when the sun set and her clothes were completely drenched with blood. On top of that, a slightly crazed look could be seen in her eyes, but she no longer had the feeling of vomiting. When she looked at Li Zhu after exiting the room, a pleading look could be seen in her eyes. However, Li Zhu shook her head coldly and said, "We will continue tomorrow." She then left. Behind her, 2 clear streams could be seen on her face. Today, after the soldiers finished tidying up the stone chamber, they could not help but end up vomiting as well. There were 10 bodies that died in 10 different ways. They could not help but think to themselves, could it be that Miss Chen used the bodies of these individuals to draw flowers with her sword? On the 8th day, when Ling Chen left the stone chamber, Li Zhu had actually commanded people to serve up 2 bowls of steaming beef noodles. The noodles were garnished on top with red-colored condiments. She then called Ling Chen over to enjoy the noodles with her and happily ate one of the bowls. This action made Ling Chen, who already had a certain degree of immunity and didn't really feel disgusted anymore, puke for a whole afternoon. Of course, this incident made Ling Tian greatly displeased and he almost wanted to fine Li Zhu for a fight. Even if she wanted to train someone, she should have some limits. A vicious lady is vicious indeed. At night, Li Zhu ignored the disagreement of everyone else and forcefully brought Ling Chen out of the courtyard. She purposefully picked the place where the almost 100 members of the Nangong family were buried and the 2 of them chatted for a whole night. On the 9th day, Ling Chen, who had not had proper breakfast for 8 days, actually ate a bowl of rice and soup. She then entered the stone chamber without any hesitation. This time, Ling Chen only used 10 minutes. She didn't puke or sleep and actually went to settle the daily affairs that she had ignored over the past few days. On the final day, Li Zhu did not make an appearance at all and Ling Chen only spent 5 minutes in the stone chamber. When she left, her face was calm and a complicated look could be seen in her eyes. Her dress was spotless, and she was like a fairy who had just returned from a stargazing trip. When she entered her room, She used a snow-white handkerchief to wipe the body of her spotless sword. Nan Gongyu's body was carried out of the chamber, and this vicious lady finally came to the end of her life. However, in her final journey on Earth, she had fully taken on the role of being a pig to be slaughtered. How would she be feeling in her heart? After Nan Gongyu's death, Ling Chen stood in front of her grave for a moment before leaving emotionlessly. The final wish of Nan Gongyu resounded in her heart: when Ling Tian returns, I hope that you can bring him here and ask him to spend some time here. However, please do not tell him who is buried under the earth. Up until her death, Nan Gongyu still had a trace of pride and her unrequited love. Ling Chen let out a mournful sigh. A pitiful person definitely has something hateful. Perhaps this phrase should be reversed: a hateful person definitely has something pitiful. Regardless, everything is already over, and it is time for you to rest in peace. Have a good journey, Nan Gongyu. Perhaps there will be a second life? No matter what, Ling Chen would never let Nan Gongyu off. With Nan Gongyu's temperament, actions, and craziness, perhaps the only form of release for her was the lonely road of death. As such, the Ling family courtyard reverted back to normal. Ling Chen, Li Zhu and the rest also went back to normal. On the surface, the conversation between the few ladies wasn't any different, but there seemed to be something different about Ling Chen. There seemed to be something extra and something lacking at the same time. But after a short while, everyone quickly got used to it. Chapter 499, Incoming Storm. Shui Kiana was completely clueless as to what had happened to Ling Chen over the past 10 days. After the arrival of the Shui family experts in sky-bearing, they would have major or minor conflicts with the local powers almost every day. In fact, they also had a number of confrontations with the Yu family as well. In such an important period, Ling Chen disappeared completely and refused to see anyone. Why would her sister, who paid her frequent visits in the past, disappear suddenly? This made the already anxious Shui Kiana bite her lips to the point blisters could be seen. Just what should I do? The battle with the Yu family is right in front of my very eyes, and if we do not have the support of the Ling family at this moment, wouldn't we as guests be eaten alive by the Yu family? After all, they were flying blind in the heavenly star continent, and if they were to meet a true crisis, they wouldn't even know which direction to flee. Furthermore, Shui Kiana's cousins would use every method up their sleeves to seek trouble with Shui Kiana, and the past few miserable days were like years to Shui Kiana. While Ling Chen did send a Ling Chi as reinforcement for them, it was no different from paying her lip service. The only thing Ling Chi would do would be to ensure that no harm came to Shui Kiana. However, the vicious remarks, despicable teasing, and endless mocking would not stop. Shui Qianzhong and his brothers weren't fools either. Even if Shui Qianhuan made a grave mistake, he was still the only son of the present family head, and they would not dare to harm him directly. However, mocking him from the side definitely didn't count as harm. The three brothers took turns to tease and mock Shui Qianhuan, humiliating him in every way possible. This made the already injured Shui Qianhuan suffer a huge mental blow, and his unrecovered injuries worsened even further. Shui Qianhuan ended up puking blood for many days in a row and was skinny like a branch with his life on the line. Before she received instructions from Ling Chen, Shui Kiana would definitely not dare to take her Shui family members to find Ling Chen hastily. She would pay a visit to the Ling family courtyard every day alone, but not to mention Ling Chen, she could not even see Li Zhu. The person who would accompany her every day was her fated rival and newly sworn sister, Yu Bingyan. Shui Kiana felt like she was going crazy. If Ling Chen did not appear soon, her own brother would probably be angered, humiliated and trampled to death by her cousins. Furthermore, the recent actions of the Yu family were also extremely odd. It was as though they were trying to prepare for something. They were very obviously trying to accumulate wealth, as though they wanted to swallow whatever they could before pulling out. with an important part of the Yu family members being present in sky-bearing, together with the fact that both her Shui and the Yu family weren't in their own territory. This was the best time for their Shui family to weaken the Yu family. How would Shui Kiana be willing to let go of such an opportunity? But without Ling Chen making an appearance, Shui Kiana did not dare to make a decision on her own. As for the few Shui family elders, they would naturally not be able to suppress the Yu family who were the natives to Heavenly Star. In order to be safe, all the elders agreed to wait a moment before making a decision. However, if they were to continue waiting, the already roasted duck would probably fly away. This was the 11th time Shui Kiana entered the Ling family courtyard. It was also the 11th day of the Shui family experts entering sky-bearing. Shui Kiana held onto a glass of tea and sat on the chair in a complete daze and at a loss. Ever since she was born, when had she felt this way before? She asked herself over and over again if something went wrong. She could not understand why Ling Chen did not want to see her. Could it be that Ling Chen was dissatisfied at her Shui family's misinformation about the number of troops coming to Heavenly Star? Could it be that Shui Kiana was enraged at her cousin's attitudes? Regardless of the reason, it didn't seem good for their Shui family. Being in a state of anxiousness and panic, regardless of what Yu Bingyan said, Shui Kiana did not hear a single word and only gave perfunctory replies. Yu Bingyan was originally trying her best to create a conversation after seeing Shui Kiana's troubled appearance, but hearing her perfunctory replies she let out a bitter laugh and decided to shut her mouth. The two of them then sat in the room staring at each other to the point their eyes widened. Or perhaps, it would be more accurate to say that Yu Bingyan looked at Shui Kiana, who was in a daze. As for Shui Kiana, she did not even know what she was thinking about anymore. Outside the door, barely audible footsteps could be heard, and Ling Chen's apologetic voice sounded, "I really have to apologize to younger sister. There were just too many things that happened in the past few days. After making a trip out of the courtyard, I suffered some injuries and that resulted in the delay of a few days. I am really sorry. Younger sister must be anxious from waiting." Shui Kiana stood up immediately as though she had just heard an imperial decree and replied with a smile, "It's alright, the most important thing is that elder sister is back safely." As she raised her head up, she could not help but be shocked. While Ling Chen looked like she was healthy and energetic, Shui Kiana could tell that Ling Chen was far skinnier than she was 10 days ago. Her cheeks were slim to the point her cheekbones could be seen. Her eyes also seemed to be slightly larger, with the veins being faintly visible. Her originally frail appearance looked even more pitiful at the moment, and she looked as though she could be blown away by a light gust of wind. "Elder sister, what happened?" She originally suspected that Ling Chen was only giving her an excuse to shut her up, but upon seeing Ling Chen's appearance, Shui Kiana no longer had the heart to feign courtesy. She felt her heart take and shot towards Ling Chen's side and asked with concern all over her face, "What happened exactly? Why would you lose so much weight?" She then suddenly felt her heart sink as she thought, could it be that something happened to him? Thinking about that, she felt a sharp pain in her chest as though it was being hammered down with a large hammer. Her face turned pale as she took 2 steps back and her eyes seemed to have lost all color. "Oh, it is fine already," Ling Chen said with a smile. "There was something that happened that required my personal attention. On the way back, I met with an assassination attempt by the absolute elites of the Nangong family, and I almost didn't manage to make it back. However, I have delayed younger sister's affairs, and I hope that younger sister wouldn't blame me." "I see." Shui Kiana felt a load off her shoulders before saying with self-blame, "Since elder sister is injured, why aren't you taking good care of yourself? This younger sister's presence has disturbed elder sister's resting time, and this younger sister should be the one in the wrong." Looking at Ling Chen, who was in front of her, Shui Kiana could vaguely feel that while Ling Chen was still the same Ling Chen who she was familiar with, Ling Chen seemed to have an additional charisma but yet seemed to be lacking something as well. It was as though Ling Chen underwent a huge transformation over the past few days, and Shui Kiana could not help but feel the Ling Chen in front of her to be extremely foreign. It doesn't matter. Ling Chen smiled warmly and sat down. For younger sister to come here today, there should be something important, right? Shui Kiana smiled bitterly and a frustrated look could be seen on her face. Shui Kiana and the others have gone too far. These few days. Ling Chen replied with doubt, didn't I send Ling Chi over? Why? They actually don't want to give my Ling family face. They really dare to make things difficult for your brother? As Ling Chen's tone changed, an eerie feeling also emanated out from Ling Chen and a tinge of bloodiness could be felt. Shui Kiana felt difficulty breathing all of a sudden and forced herself to take 2 deep breaths before continuing with a forced smile, what is elder sister talking about? My Shui family naturally has to be extremely respectful to the Ling family when we are in sky bearing. However, their words are truly nasty, and with my brother's arrogance and his unrecovered wounds, his injuries have inevitably been influenced by their words. Shui Kiana could not help but gasp in shock internally. In just a short few days of not seeing Ling Chen, while Ling Chen's actions and words weren't any different, her aura had completely transformed. Just the eerie and bloody aura being emanated previously was something that even a soldier who had been through many battles wouldn't be able to match. It was truly frightening. Ling Chen replied with a no before smiling again, a precious sword has to be sharpened and the blossoms need to endure the harsh winter. I believe that after this incident, young Master Shui would definitely have a deeper understanding of all matters, and it isn't necessarily a bad thing for him. Shui Kiana laughed bitterly in her heart, even if it is a good thing for him, he has to first pull himself through this event. Looking at how brother is acting, he probably won't be able to last for long. Furthermore, family head Yu Man Lu suddenly took in a concubine 3 days ago, and the Yu family army seems to be congregating as though something huge is about to happen. Shui Kiana said worriedly. At the same time, the members in the Yu family stationed in Skybearing seem to have received some news and are all packing up their luggage and amassing as much wealth as they can. They look as though they are going to make an immediate retreat, and if we drag matters for too long, I am afraid. Yu Bingyan stood up hastily and her face turned ugly. Her tone then suddenly turned distant as she said hoarsely, I am feeling unwell and will return to the secret chamber first. She then turned around and left. Shui Kiana felt her face burning in embarrassment and realized that Yu Bingyan was the princess of the Yu family. To think that she would discuss with Ling Chen about their plans to deal with the Yu family right in front of her. Am I out of my mind? Why didn't I think of that? With Shui Kiana's intellect and upbringing, it was impossible for her to forget about such an important point. However, she was far too troubled over the past few days with her intestines twisting up from worry and thus overlooked the matter. Besides that, it was also because Shui Kiana truly treated Yu Bingyan as her own sister and did not guard against her at all. Thus, such a scene unfolded today. It was also extremely strange. After Yu Bingyan and Shui Kiana became sworn sisters, the relationship between these 2 individuals who were fated to be life or death rivals was actually the closest. They were far closer to each other than to Ling Chen, who was the one who initiated to become sworn sisters. It was as though the 2 of them did not consider the identity of the other party, and this was something that made both Ling Chen and Li Zhu astounded. Now that Shui Kiana spelled out her worries without any wariness in front of Yu Bingyan, it was because she truly didn't guard against Yu Bingyan in the slightest bit. Even Shui Kiana herself didn't know when such a huge change occurred in her heart, and it was truly unfathomable. This was something that both Shui Kiana and Yu Bingyan were extremely clear about. However, Yu Bingyan was still sandwiched in the middle and was stuck in a dilemma. Especially when she heard about the news of Yu Man Lu accepting a concubine. The 3 ladies were completely flabbergasted, and Yu Bingyan had the urge to dig a hole to bury her head underground. Only Ling Chen and Shui Kiana were left in the room, and after a long while of facing each other, Ling Chen suddenly began giggling before pointing at the awkward Shui Kiana. Ha ha ha. Truly a fated pair of sisters. Shui Kiana opened her mouth awkwardly, but not a word came out. She then let out a sigh which was filled with both bitterness and joy. With regards to the Yu family, I was already informed about it. However, there have been some recent changes, and it wouldn't be convenient for my Ling family to make an appearance. We are after all the in-laws of the Yu family. Even if we are eager to accomplish something, we cannot change that fact. Ling Chen said slowly. Some recent changes? In-laws? Is your Ling family going to make peace with the Yu family? Shui Kiana asked anxiously. Ling Chen went silent for a moment as she thought about the newest piece of news that her young noble sent. She then replied in a vague manner, "We are still sisters after all, and I do not want to hide anything from you." The young noble sent news that with regards to the Yu family, our Ling family can only aid you in the dark but not aid any of you openly. Shui Kiana let out an "oh" and relaxed. As long as the Ling family does not join hands with the Yu family, it wouldn't matter whether or not the Ling family work in the dark or light. This wouldn't affect their alliance and the present situation wouldn't change. Ling Chen muttered under her breath for a moment before suddenly saying, "According to my estimates, the Yu family will be pulling out from Skybearing over the next few days. The opportunity that all of you have been waiting for may arrive very soon." Shui Kiana's eyes lit up and she said, "I'm all ears." Ling Chen blinked her eyes and said with a smile, "I have already sent orders for my men to not stop the Yu family from taking whatever they wanted. Thus, the Yu family's troops would definitely be extremely huge and slow." Elder sister, you are too naughty. Shui Kiana laughed and immediately became energetic, using such a method to slow them down and reduce their strength considerably. What a brilliant plan. A smile could be seen on Ling Chen's face as she said, "A human's selfishness and greed is endless. Especially these little subordinates of the Yu family. While gold and silver may be no different from ordinary rocks in Yu Manlu's eyes, to ordinary experts of the Yu family, it is their basis of survival. Thus, even if Yu Manlu issued an order, these men will only leave when their pockets are full." Ling Chen turned around and said with a tinge of mockery, "The moment greed and selfishness blind their eyes, our opportunity will arrive. The moment they leave Skybearing will also be the moment that heavenly lightning will descend." Shui Kiana's breathing turned heavy and her eyes shone brightly. "Our Shui family members would definitely intercept their troops along the way to return a favor to the Yu family members. We have to repay them for the debt of obstructing me." Ling Chen looked at Shui Kiana and said, "We will provide you with detailed information of the Yu family's route and the most accurate information. We will even include the martial skills that the leaders of the Yu family specialize in, their combat strength, how much jewelry they are carrying and all other factors that may affect their combat strength. It would definitely not miss out a single point. However, we are unable to participate in this ambush and every single detail of the attack shall be planned fully by you. We will not interfere in the matter at all. Is there a problem?" "No problem at all," Shui Kiana said, brimming with confidence. "If we are still unable to give the Yu family a huge blow despite our advantage, we do not deserve to share the same reputation as the Yu family." Chapter 500, Brewing Crisis. Looking at Shui Kiana's excited face, Ling Chen suddenly let out a smile as she unhurriedly said, "Some matters, while being confident is a must, being overconfident will also lead to problems. Sister, should be prepared for any scenario to happen." Shui Kiana let out a sound of agreement, but her heart still disapproved a little as she remarked, "Sister does not need to worry, there will not be any problems." The moment she finished speaking, she paused for a while before she continued, "Sister Chen, since our families are now in a cooperative relationship, should you take a look at my clansmen who came over?" Ling Chen contemplated for a while before smiling. "That's fine." Upon recalling the three youths of the Shui family, an icy cold intent surfaced on her brows. Having achieved her objective, Shui Kiana was full of happiness and bade farewell as she left. At this point, Li Zhu suddenly appeared from behind Ling Chen, gazing at Shui Kiana's diminishing silhouette as she indifferently asked, "Shall we act?" Ling Chen leaned back wearily, as she let out a soft sound of assent, her voice faintly discernible. "Such a huge affair gives me the feeling that we're treading on thin ice. If only young noble was here, we would have fewer problems." Li Zhu laughed. "If we were to leave any single matter to him, most likely he would be tired to death after a few days. Better than worrying for him, wouldn't you rather that he remained worry-free?" Ling Chen let out a groan and grabbed onto Li Zhu's slim waist as she grumbled, "Sister Zhu, Chenner is really tired. But, I would rather be tired than sad." Tenderly stroking the head of hair that was pressed on her stomach, Li Zhu tenderly replied, "For him, we can do anything. And it won't be a chore. For him, even the worst of fatigue will disappear." Ling Chen lightly replied. "Regarding the documents of Southern Zheng, have you received them?" Li Zhu suddenly asked. "That's right, and the Ling family's military force is also in the process of assembling, slowly pressuring the Southern Zheng area." Ling Chen muttered. "Don't move, Sister Zhu. Let me lean on you for a while longer." Li Zhu could only let out a sigh as she thought, "I seem to have become a nanny for Ling Tian. Not only must I take care of him, but I even have to take care of his woman now." She could not help but inwardly laugh. For those in a leadership position, a single sentence can be a strategy, to the point that even a random thought coming from them could potentially result in a domino effect, not to mention meticulously planning for a scheme. At this point, the side of Northern Wei was already at the point where soldiers were all armed to the teeth, swords drawn as the clouds of war covered the area densely. War could happen at any possible moment. More than 100,000 soldiers were stationed at the fortress, ready to charge towards Western Han at the first signal. This overly conspicuous signal caused the people in Western Han to all tremble in fear. They could only put their all into war preparations, without developing any false fantasies. Were it the past Northern Wei, with the imperial court ruling over it, Western Han could still feel more relaxed, but now, the real authority lay within the millennium-old Yu family, and thinking about their background would make one tremble in fear. On the other hand, in Skybearing where the Ling family ruled now, Ling Tian's father Ling Zhou had mobilized tens of thousands of troops, encroaching towards the south, finally setting up a gigantic campsite 50 to 60 li away from their territory, giving off an unyielding attitude towards Southern Zheng, sending people to attack his own daughter-in-law. Ling Zhou displayed utmost resentment, demanding an explanation from them. And while Southern Zheng had offered compensation a few times, they were all arrogantly rejected by Ling Zhou, claiming that they had no sincerity behind the compensation. Having to compromise to such a large extent, yet having the other party say that their compensation had no sincerity, their intentions were quite obvious at this point. The monarch of Southern Zheng had long ago seen through the Ling family's evil intentions, using this excuse to launch the war. Even if the assassination did not occur, sooner or later, they would still have come knocking with any random excuse in order to incite them to fight. Furious, Southern Zheng also began mobilizing their men, with an aura that was not disadvantaged in any way. The Ling family's second general Shenru, who also brought over 10,000 troops, deploying them to the common border between Skybearing and Eastern Zhou, before settling down and waiting. This threw Eastern Zhou into a panic. Could it be that the Ling family planned to war on two fronts? Or could it be that the ruckus at Southern Zheng was a ploy, and the real objective would be the east? The multitude of differing opinions made it hard for anyone to come to a concrete conclusion. Within the Ling family courtyard, the military advisor personally appointed by Ling Tian, Meng Li was displaying his scholarly abilities to the fullest by devising strategy after strategy, closely holding the battle progress of the two sides. The elites of the courtyard were also all prepared to go out to war, eyeing the battlefield as they prepared to set off the moment the command was given. Under the influence of the Yu and Ling families, the #1 financial magnate, the Zhou family, seemed to have felt the skies changing. They suddenly exposed all their hidden troops, quickly assembling and pointing in the direction of Sky-bearing and Gold Jade City, eyeing them covetously. The Heavenly Star continent was suddenly covered in the clouds of war. However, it continued to brew without the rain falling. The pressure enveloping the continent was at an extreme, and everyone was waiting for the point when a little spark would be enough to ignite the entire area. In just these few days, the state of affairs in Heavenly Star had become a nervous wreck. It was as though someone had started burning wolf dung to raise the alarm, for those in the know could already smell something unusual. While there were only a few influences involved in this operation, the 3 influences were basically the strongest 3 under the heavens, or at least within Heavenly Star, enough to determine the situation of the entire continent. Right now, the restless actions of all the predators at the top of the food chain would sink the entire world into the chaos of war. The people within the Heavenly Star continent were just like the reptiles hibernating before the first sign of spring came, silently waiting for that signal to ignite. However, nobody knew if that signal would actually bring happiness or disaster. They could only wait for the rain of war to descend. As for the main character of the Ling family, our great noble Ling Tian, he was actually bringing a peerless beauty along with him as he leisurely traversed in an unknown forest. Not only was his pace unhurried, he even took time during this escape from death trip of his to pick up and flirt with chicks. The journey was filled with tender sentiments akin to honey, with an unexplainable sense of springtime. During this period, Ling Tian could feel the internal energy in his body mysteriously increasing beyond his past capacity with unsurpassed purity, just like observing a crystal-clear spring in the mountains. Every time he finished a complete cycle, he would obtain a whole new sensation. This pleased him to no end. Could it be that the actual method of the divine shocking dragon formula was of such strength? As he was feeling out the effects of his internal energy, Ling Tian could also feel that today was different from usual, as he had spent the night out in the open rather than staying in an inn. The results of his cultivation last night far outstripped that when he was in an inn, which made him puzzled. However, recognizing this point, he decided to give up on finding inns to stay at, thus opting to bring Zhou Yanzu around the forests to look for a place to pitch tent so she could rest. After that, he stationed himself outside the entrance, and indeed his cultivation speed actually rose. Under the boost provided to his cultivation speed, Ling Tian could also feel the Shanzong acupoint in his chest producing some sort of extremely stable energy. This energy would permeate into his various meridians and guide his own internal energy flow, allowing more ease and less obstruction. While Ling Tian was unaware of the nature of that mysterious strength, he knew that his own internal energy cultivation was rising by leaps and bounds during this period of time, and it was all because of that strength. Ling Tian did not bother to worry about it because after he had reached the 12th layer of his divine shocking dragon formula, his acupoints had already long gained the ability to absorb the energy of heaven and earth. Ling Tian subconsciously felt that his body had produced this mysterious strength due to having obtained the orthodox formula. But there was a downside to staying in the wilds. He had to face the dissatisfaction of the great Miss Show. Having been clothed and fed the best since she was young, how would she ever enjoy such a scenario where she had to sleep on the cold hard rocks of the wilderness, causing her body to ache? How could this little girl with soft and supple skin endure such torture? However, Zhou Yanzu thought of an idea later on, which was to open up the tent and situate herself half in and out of the tent, using Ling Yan as a pillow. However, what happened next was that while she slept, she would unrestrainedly end up crawling into Ling Tian's bosom, causing our poor Ling Tian to scream internally in grief even while he cultivated. Physically, there was no problem with letting her do so, as when Ling Tian cultivated, His body would take in the energy from the atmosphere, thus he would not feel any burden on himself. However, Ling Tian was, in the end, a hot-blooded youth in his prime. Having not vented for quite a while, he would definitely feel something. This was where the trouble started. A sweet-smelling, marshmallow soft body without any guard lying on his chest, but yet he did not dare to do anything, nor could he. If anything happened he would need to take responsibility, and before Zhou Yanzu got rid of her infatuation towards him, he did not dare to accept this responsibility. As such, Ling Tian became more and more uncomfortable. That petite body with curves, that heaven-toppling beauty, as well as her womanly scent caused little Ling Tian to be at the fullest attention, especially in the early morning. Sometimes, little Ling Tian could even go on for a few hours without losing attention, and in order to relax, Ling Tian could only run to the ice-cold mountain spring in the wee hours of the morning to bathe. Even as he bathed, he could feel the icy cold water growing warm. Ling Tian angrily let out sigh after sigh. How was he supposed to go on living? After suppressing it for so long, he was even starting to hurt down there. If it goes on like so, this young noble could prepare to become like the invinciblest one at times. He simply just wanted to push down this little lass and get it over and done with, but upon thinking twice, it was only just a thought, and he had to push it to the back of his mind. Falling into this temptation would only result in grave consequences. As for Zhou Yanzu, she actually took on an aggressive stance after finding out that Ling Tian didn't dare to touch her. That little lass actually reversed the roles of host and guest, teasing Ling Tian day and night without stopping, such as her shirt would suddenly be half open, and suddenly a pale white thigh would stick out. And to the point that upon seeing a little white rabbit, she screamed and jumped into Ling Tian's chest, then began to lightly grind. Then she would watch as Ling Tian began to breathe heavily, and just as he was about to morph into a wolf, he would wake up and run far away. Zhou Yanzu would then burst into laughter at his bedraggled look. Chapter 501, Extreme Danger. Ling Tian's countenance was completely ashen as he swore in his heart that he would definitely teach Zhou Yanzu a lesson in future. However, regardless of how he swore or cursed in his heart, he would never dare to take care of Zhou Yanzu. Especially using such a method to take care of her. Ling Tian never believed that he was a good man. But with regards to women, he had a great deal of resistance. Especially a lady who was swaying between him and her own family. Ling Tian had his own principles, and he would never touch Zhou Yanzu under such circumstances. It would be even more impossible for him to possess Zhou Yanzu now, only to abandon her in the future. If he were to have a relationship with Zhou Yanzu, he would definitely take responsibility for her until the very end. At the same time, if Ling Tian was unable to take responsibility for her, he would never take another step in their relationship, lest the other party or himself end up in a dilemma. Ling Tian could mercilessly kill his foes on the battlefield regardless of gender, but he was extremely careful when dealing with matters of the heart. This was probably a form of insistence as well. Tonight, young noble Ling Tian could no longer hold himself back any further and sealed Zhou Yanzu's acupoints before throwing her into the tent. He then left the tent and sat cross-legged in meditation near the tent. This was because Ling Tian felt as though there was some oddity in his inner chi and it was fluctuating strangely. Ling Tian knew that this was the sign that his inner chi was about to achieve a breakthrough, and if Zhou Yanzu was in his embrace, he would probably seriously injure her the instant he achieved a breakthrough. For safety considerations and because he was afraid of being annoyed by that lass, Ling Tian decided to just seal up her acupoints. After 3 rounds of circulation of his inner chi, a loud bang went off in Ling Tian's head, and the inner chi all over his body began churning uncontrollably. His inner chi flowed through his body rapidly like a rushing river and with the force of a 1,000-foot waterfall. At the same time, pure inner qi rushed into his body from the Beihui acupoint on his head and Yongquan acupoint on his feet. In just an instant, Ling Tian immediately felt that he was in danger. The inner qi in his body that was rapidly absorbing the pure qi from his surroundings was completely out of his control. It had turned extremely violent, and his usually gentle inner qi seemed to have turned into a completely unreasonable beast full of destructive force. As for the target to be destroyed, it was naturally Ling Tian. The violent inner qi smashed against Ling Tian's meridians, with each wave being more powerful than the previous one. Ling Tian immediately felt as though he was like a small boat in the ocean and was in danger of capsizing at any moment. He couldn't help but be in shock. While there were dangers in the previous breakthroughs of his cultivation, this was the first time Ling Tian was completely helpless and without any confidence. This was definitely not the sign of his cultivation breaking through. A breakthrough in cultivation would definitely not be accompanied by such a situation. Just what went wrong? Ling Tian was completely puzzled. However, he did not have the chance to ponder over the matter at the moment, as all of his thoughts and attention were exhausted in combating his violent inner qi. In fact, Ling Tian did not even notice that there was a small glow on his chest like a firefly in the summer. Every time it flashed, the inner qi in his body would become more violent. At the same time, the ball of light seemed to be flashing with a certain rhythm. Ling Tian shut both his eyes and tried to protect his last shred of consciousness as he silently endured the violent attacks of his inner qi. The pain in his body was overwhelming, and it far exceeded the pain he felt when he consumed the great cyclic pellet. It was as though all the meridians in his body had been shattered before being connected up again, and it was as though all of his bones were shattered into small fragments before being joined up again. Such pain was something far beyond what an ordinary human would be able to bear. From the beginning to the end, Ling Tian did not even let out a grunt. Not only did he not let out a grunt, his countenance remained calm and not a single change on his expression could be seen. While his body was completely drenched in cold sweat and every single inch of his muscles was trembling and cramping up uncontrollably, Ling Tian still held onto his final shred of consciousness without letting go. He forced the muscles on his face to be completely within his control. At this moment, Ling Tian had the feeling that death was right before his very eyes. He could feel death slowly approaching him, and while he did not know why, he could feel death extremely clearly. Thus, Ling Tian forced out a smile on his lips. Since he couldn't avoid it, he would endure to the very end. Since he couldn't avoid it, then he should face death calmly and with a smile. His inner qi flowed even more rapidly in his body. It was as though there was a 100-foot dragon being trapped in a small space less than a square meter, struggling to get out with all of its might but unable to find an opening to burst free. With two papa sounds, Ling Tian's left and right shoulders were destroyed by his violent inner qi, and his blood shot out tens of feet. His inner qi immediately rushed out of his body rapidly, and with a hong sound, his clothes were shattered and his well-built figure was completely revealed. On his well-built figure, trails of blood could be seen emerging on his body. The meridians in Ling Tian's body had been expanded to their maximum capacity at this moment. It was also all Ling Tian could endure at the moment. In Ling Tian's inner sight, he could see his inner qi gushing through his meridians as though they were liquefied. Furthermore, the amount of inner qi was increasing every moment. If a person had such wide meridians, any inner qi formula he cultivated would definitely achieve twice the result with half the effort. Even his attacking speed would definitely be increased by many times. However, Ling Tian's present situation was a fine example of too far is as bad as not enough. His meridians were expanded to the very limits of what a human body could take, and if his inner qi violently rushed at his meridians again, Ling Tian's inner qi would definitely be completely shattered. The blood flowing throughout his body and even his innards might rush out from his body. At that time, even a descending celestial would not be able to save Ling Tian's life. Ling Tian could clearly detect all of these, But the inner chi in his body was no longer within his control, and there was a mysterious force at the top of his head and bottom of his feet rapidly taking in chi from his surroundings. It continued to crazily gather within his body while crazily roaring in his body. On the surface of Ling Tian's body, a rapid airstream could be seen visibly gathering around his body with a whooshing sound. It was just like the sound of crying ghosts. His skin began to inflate again. Ling Tian's life was on the line. Death was so near to him. A black figure landed in front of Ling Tian soundlessly, and the moonlight revealed Justice's clear facial features. This #1 expert, who had disappeared after the fight with the 18 above heavens experts and who was the biggest danger to Ling Tian, had actually appeared at this very moment. He had found Ling Tian's whereabouts and arrived by Ling Tian's side. On his shoulders, a slanted ancient sword could be seen. If Ling Tian opened his eyes at this moment, he would definitely be able to tell that this was the very sword that the powers of the continent fought over, the Heaven Splitter. It seems like after this #1 expert was ambushed by the above heavens experts, he decided to carry this divine weapon with him. Seeing Ling Tian's appearance, Justice could not help but be astounded, and a look of incredulity could be seen on his face. From the ancient times until now, Ling Tian's situation had never appeared before. Even if one suffered from cultivation deviation, Ling Tian's present situation would never happen. Justice was astounded. He suddenly stretched out his hand and rapidly shot out towards Ling Tian's Beihuiaku point. Not a trace of killing intent was present in his action, and he purely wanted to give Ling Tian aid. Even if he wanted to kill Ling Tian, he would fight Ling Tian openly and would disdain taking advantage of such a situation. Furthermore, Justice did not have the thought to kill Ling Tian at the moment. He had rushed over the moment he detected Ling Tian's aura with killing intent, but now, he did not have a single thought of killing Ling Tian. How can I let my opponent die like that? I have been lonely for far too long. Without an opponent worthy of being a match for me, life is just too boring. Ling Tian must not die. Even if he must die in my hands. Justice rapidly placed his palm over Ling Tian's head, and facing the pressure from an external source, Ling Tian's inner chi rushed out rapidly. Justice took in a deep breath and forced his arm down. With a bang, Justice was completely astonished, and his arm was actually forcefully pushed back. Ling Tian's inner chi and had actually forced this #1 expert back by a step. Justice's face even flushed red. Eh? Justice let out a shocked cry and looked at Ling Tian with incredulity. As a peerless expert, he naturally knew what this inner chi meant. Such a powerful inner chi was not something that a human body could endure, and not something that a person would be able to cultivate. Such inner chi was enough to stuff any martial arts expert to the point he explodes. Even Justice would not be an exception. Thinking about this, Justice also understood how much pain Ling Tian must be enduring right now, but seeing Ling Tian's calm expression, Justice could not help but be filled with admiration for this young opponent of his. Such mental strength was something that even he did not have. If Ling Tian was to have another few more years, he would definitely be able to grow up to become a martial arts grandmaster. However, it was a pity. Justice let out a long sigh. With his experience, he could naturally tell that Ling Tian was beyond saving. If even his inner chi that was almost unparalleled in the world was unable to suppress the inner chi in Ling Tian's body, there was probably nothing in the world capable of suppressing it. Was Ling Tian dead for sure? At this moment, Ling Tian suddenly opened his eyes, and a pair of profound eyes looked towards Justice. His eyes were filled with calmness, and it even carried with it a trace of joy. Justice could clearly see that Ling Tian was calmly giving him a farewell at this moment. Justice could not help but feel his heart shake. The fear of death was completely absent from this youngster's face. He had actually seen past life and death. At the brink of life and death, he did not struggle needlessly but decided to face it openly. In fact, he even decided to embrace it. Chapter 502, Mysterious phenomenon. If today I was in Ling Tian's shoes, would I be able to do it? To see through it? Would I be able to face it? Or accept it? Justice asked himself honestly, suddenly feeling a strand of guilt. In front of this dying youth who was his opponent, Justice suddenly felt that he did not possess the right to despise this person. Neither did he have the right to sentence this person to death. While he might be called Heavenly Justice, but to himself, did he really have the qualifications to call himself Heavenly Justice? Ling Tian had already given up. Be it energy or his state of mind, both had already reached their limits. He could no longer control the violent internal energy inside him, that much he knew. The next instant would be him imploding due to the excess of energy. However, Ling Tian was still extremely calm within his heart. While he regretted, while he had attachments. But everything didn't matter anymore. Just start from the beginning once again. A secretive smile appeared on Ling Tian's face, and he slowly closed his eyes. The internal energy in his body was still violently revolving, and when it finally reached maximum velocity, all the atmospheric energy that was entering Ling Tian's body like a whirlpool suddenly came to a screeching halt. After that moment of silence, one could see Ling Tian's exposed skin suddenly shrink before ballooning out rapidly. Popping sounds could be heard as his skin split apart in multiple places, giving a shock to anyone who saw it. Justice sighed once loudly, turning his body around. He could not bear to look any longer. Never in his dreams would he expect that a genius rarely seen even in a millennium would actually be buried in this place. Right at this moment, a crisp ding sound could be heard, and a pale green ray of light flashed in front of Ling Tian's chest as a simple and unadorned jade pendant suddenly leaped out as though being pulled by an invisible hand. It mysteriously floated in midair, letting out little rays of light, accompanied by a faint fog, causing the scene to become blurry. Clang! The heaven splitter on the back of Justice suddenly shot out of its sheath on its own volition, letting out a cold light from its half-finished body. In the moonlight, it gleamed with resplendence, freezing in midair without falling back into the sheath. The cold killing intent exuded by the sword could be felt on the nape of Justice, causing goosebumps to form. As for the rampaging violent energy that was about to blast Ling Tian's body to bits, it calmed down all of a sudden, and a hissing sound was heard, as a tiny black dot squirmed into the jade pendant as though it had a life of its own. Ling Tian had already slipped into unconsciousness, or else he would have recognized the little black dot as belonging to the jade given to him by Shui Kiana, the Heaven's Heart Jade, as flexible as water. After being shattered by Yu Manlu the other time, Ling Tian had conveniently scooped up the black dot, which was now boring into the other jade pendant he carried with him, Yu Bingyan's token of love. As sleek as clouds. Ling Tian had even voiced his suspicions before, that the heirlooms of the Shui and Yu family were actually the same, as though they were made to be a pair. The light glow from the jade pendant shone on Ling Tian's body, and the recklessly rampaging energy, as though receiving a command, obediently surged into the jade pendant. As the speed of absorption increased, the jade started to let out a faint red color. Finally, with an explosion of light, a beam shot out, landing on the heaven splitter behind Justice. The heaven splitter let out a shrill cry as it gave out resplendent beams of light, strangely suspending itself in midair. The sword tip pointed towards Ling Tian as it shot out a stream of white sword energy to link them together. At this point, one man, one jade, and one sword actually formed a continuous and unbroken chain. Blood, azure, and white. The three colors continuously changed places, restlessly revolving. When the jade pendant first appeared, Justice had immediately recognized it as the heirloom of the Yu family, the Heaven's Heart Jade. This piece of jade had already been passed through quite a few hands in the Yu and Shui family, and being the cause of countless bloodshed, how could Justice as the martial order medallion owner of the Beyond Heavens not recognize it? The jades were even kept within the Beyond Heavens sect for a period of time. But what he never expected was for the jades to be on Ling Tian's body. The people who possessed knowledge of the jades were limited to only the Yu and Shui families, as within lay a huge secret. However, even after a millennium, no one was able to actually crack the secret within. After a long time, it had turned into a mere keepsake heirloom, without anyone poring over it. To think that it could display such an effect on Ling Tian today. As for the Heaven Splitter, there was also the legend that with it one could rule the world, and it had similarly been passed down for a millennium. Could it be that within these three, there was actually some sort of relation? Why had no one heard of it even after so long? Could it be that this millennium-old secret was about to be revealed today? What was this matter exactly? Justice was shocked as he watched this unexplainable scene occur in front of him. He only felt as though his worldview of whatever he learned in the past had been flipped upside down. Right now, all the knowledge in his brain had turned to mush. He tilted his head slightly, staring at the Heaven Splitter suspended above him, his eyes full of confusion. The sounds of Zayu 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 given out by the beam continued to ring out, clear and distinct. Ling Tian was still in an unconscious state, and on his handsome face was a faint smile. Justice could acutely feel that right now, the Jade Pendant, the Heaven Splitter, and Ling Tian, as well as heaven and earth, had combined to form one whole and that he had been excluded from it. This sort of feeling led to a sense of abandonment in his heart, and he could not help but let out a bitter smile. Having such a fortuitous encounter, it was unknown as to whether Ling Tian's cultivation would receive yet another boost and allow him to break through once again. Justice's heart suddenly had a hint of anticipation. He had long confirmed that to Ling Tian this was an extremely dangerous situation, but also a once-in-a-lifetime lucky chance. A secret that could not be unraveled for a millennium, how could it be ordinary? To think that he had spent so much effort, passed through so many places all in pursuit of Ling Tian, only to end up as his protector. Justice could not help but let out a mocking smile. DMN his mother, how could this fellow's luck be so good? If it wasn't for him coincidentally bringing the Heaven Splitter over, Ling Tian would have long ago turned into a pile of meat paste. But it was so at his moment of death, that Justice had spotted a hint of his life signature and ran over with his movement skill pushed to his maximum extent. What dog's tea luck? DMN. Based on Justice's eyes, he could naturally see that the Heaven Splitter was not something that could be excluded from this equation. Could it be that within this unseen world of spirits, everyone had their own destiny? Suddenly, Justice's face tightened as an incredulous thought surfaced in his mind. Could this be the so-called will of heaven? The true heaven's will? The calm and stoic face of Justice changed for the first time in a long while. If Justice were to make a move now, he was sure that he would be able to shatter the cycle of the three with just his strength, killing the defenseless Ling Tian under his palm. However, with his arrogance, how would Justice actually pull off such a deed? Even if he had to kill Ling Tian, he had to kill him openly. Heavenly Justice, this martial order medallion owner who looked down on everyone in disdain, never stooped so low as to backstab someone. Even if Ling Tian were to rise to the same cultivation as me, so what? I, Heavenly Justice, have never been defeated before. How could there be an exception even if it's Ling Tian? A confident smile hung on the edges of Justice's mouth. A rustling sound was heard before, and Justice's heart jumped up as he subconsciously began to revolve his energy in preparation. While he did not care for any form of assassination, the current Ling Tian was someone that even a little kitten could disrupt and kill at this very moment. However, looking at the source, it turned out to be a frightened little rabbit that immediately scampered away. Justice laughed to himself. He really was reading too much into it. Since when had he actually began to really care about the life of this kid? Upon recalling the gaze of embracing one's incoming death coming from Ling Tian, Justice could not help but feel restless. Just what kind of realm had he reached in order to achieve that? From the ancient times to the present, with the billions of people that were alive, including tyrants, scholars and martial arts experts, who was actually able to stare death in the face and smile as they walk from the light to the darkness. Who could be as unrestrained and easy as this youth in front of him? In this face, Justice could read Ling Tian's heart, and to the latter, dying was as casual as walking from one's room into the courtyard. It was not that he did not care, and neither had he seen through death. Those two were still insufficient to explain his mentality. His was a sort of disdain, a contempt, treating it like just breathing. Justice stood quietly on the spot, staring at the sky without moving. Upon recalling the gaze Ling Tian sent towards him, he felt as though he was on the verge of touching the very core of the martial way. In an instant, he entered the state of no people, no me, forgetting about the two objects entirely. He seemed to have entered a mysterious realm at this moment, melding into both the heavens and the earth. While he seemed to be still standing in the same position, he gave off the feeling like he was part of the void itself. As for the layer of energy surrounding himself, it suddenly ballooned out, forming a huge bubble that encased both him and Ling Tian. It was not known how long a time had passed, before the heaven splitter let out a clear cry and dropped down, the point stabbing smoothly into the hard rock of the mountain. The jade pendant also fell from the sky, landing beside Ling Tian on the ground. As for the three colors that revolved in the sky, they had mysteriously disappeared. Ling Tian quietly lay on the ground, still unconscious. As for Justice, he maintained his old position of looking up, without moving even a single inch. The clouds in the sky as well as the moon, coming and going, shed light on this scene, being the only two who bore witness to this mysterious scene happening. Time continued flowing like water, quietly and steadily, without a hint of stopping. Chapter 503, Serious Injuries. As Zhou Yanzu woke up from her slumber, she felt her whole body aching. The moment she crawled out from the bed, she thought about what Ling Tian did to her last night and began stomping her feet angrily. This darn Ling Tian, he actually dared to seal this Mrs. Aku points. Unforgivable. Even if my uncle can hold his anger back in, my aunt will not be able to do so. Even if my aunt can hold her anger in, I cannot hold my anger back in. She then lifted the folds of the tent up fiercely and wanted to seek revenge on Ling Tian. However, she suddenly felt a light flashing before her eyes, and as she squinted her eyes to take a look, she saw a long sword sticking out from a pile of rocks reflecting the sunlight into her eyes. Looking at this sword, Zhou Yanzu suddenly felt a sense of familiarity and could not help but gasp, "Heaven Splitter?" This was the sword which was snatched from her hands in the auction. How could Zhou Yanzu not remember it? Seeing the appearance of the sword again, Zhou Yanzu suddenly recalled the scene of the unparalleled expert snatching the Heaven Splitter away from the experts of the various families and could not help but associate that unparalleled expert with the #1 expert in the world, Justice. If Justice was truly the owner of the Heaven Splitter, then Zhou Yanzu realized that if Justice had truly arrived, wouldn't it mean that Ling Tian's life was in danger? How was Ling Tian right now? Could something have happened to him? Could it be? Zhou Yanzu instantly sprinted over madly as tears filled her eyes. While she did not know how powerful Justice was, she could clearly remember the strength of the unparalleled expert who stole the Heaven Splitter. Regardless of whether or not he was the legendary Justice, Ling Tian would definitely not have the slightest bit of chance if that person were to attack Ling Tian. With her heart in a complete mess, Zhou Yanzu actually did not realize that there was a seemingly solid but yet translucent green figure near the Heaven Splitter. After taking 4 to 5 steps, Zhou Yanzu found Ling Tian lying on the ground silently with blood stains all over his body. His figure was motionless, and his breath could not even be detected. Zhou Yanzu let out a world-shaking shriek and suddenly felt as though her soul was being shattered into pieces. The world around her began spinning as she felt her head turn light and her sight blacking out. It was as though there wasn't the slightest bit of hope left in the world and life turned completely meaningless. Her mind was filled with thoughts but yet also completely void of any thoughts. There were only a few words resounding in her head over and over again: "He's dead. He is dead. He is dead." Zhou Yanzu stumbled her way towards Ling Tian, and the short few meters in front of her suddenly felt so endless and unrealistic. Finally, Zhou Yanzu let out a heart-wrenching cry and felt her sight blacking out before collapsing on the ground. Justice, who was alerted by Zhou Yanzu's scream, shot forward and held onto Zhou Yanzu before she collapsed, placing her body lightly onto the ground. Zhou Yanzu's face was completely pale, and she had already fainted from grief with a trace of bright red blood trickling down from her lips. With his knowledge, Justice could naturally tell that the trace of blood trickling down Zhou Yanzu's lips was a result of extreme shock and agitation. Who would have thought that the little princess of the Zhou family would be so deeply in love with Ling Tian? Justice could not help but let out a sigh. Zhou Yanzu was only scaring herself, and as for he who is supposed to kill Ling Tian, not only did he bring an item to help Ling Tian escape from certain death, he even stood guard by Ling Tian's side. With Justice standing guard by Ling Tian's side, there was nothing in the world capable of threatening Ling Tian. This level of protection was just far too high. Looking at the still unconscious Ling Tian, Justice could not help but let out a gratified smile. Not only did this brat in front of him have a heaven-shaking intellect, his martial arts were near the peak of the world, and even his luck with women was amazing. However, Ling Yan would probably be tangled with endless love problems in this life of his for sure, and an ordinary person would probably not be able to enjoy such a luxury. Thinking about this, Justice could not help but be startled. Ordinary person? Could it be that he had already admitted that Ling Tian wasn't someone ordinary in his heart? Thinking about all of the things which happened on Ling Tian, Justice could not help but let out a sigh and close his eyes. Even if he didn't want to admit it, this brat in front of him was just far too extraordinary. Right at this moment, the unconscious Ling Tian suddenly muttered, "Come if you want and leave if you want." His voice was calm and the words clearly sounded. At the same time, it was filled with endless longing and a dense tenderness with a tinge of sorrow accompanying it. This was a phrase that carried with it a deep meaning. As Justice turned around to look at Ling Tian, he realized that Ling Tian was still unconscious and motionless. An odd look could be seen in his eyes as he pondered about the meaning behind those words. Why would Ling Tian spit out such words despite being unconscious? While the phrase was short, simple and seemed extremely ordinary, just what was the meaning of Ling Tian saying those words right after he met with such a miraculous event? Justice could not help but let his imagination roam. Could it be that Ling Tian had dreamed about heavenly secrets? Thinking about that, Justice suddenly felt as though the words that Ling Tian had just said were filled with the truth of the heavenly laws. That's right. Come when it is the right time to come and leave when it is the right time to leave. However, just what was the right time? Justice frowned as he fell into deep thought. Ling Tian, who was still unconscious, felt as though his body was extremely light, as though he was a feather. At the same time, he seemed to be walking on a dense seven-colored cloud, walking on a narrow glowing pathway, walking towards an unknown destination. He could not help but let out a bitter laugh of self-mockery as he thought about how he was once again on the familiar but yet foreign Yellow Springs Road. Thinking about this, he felt a tremor in his head and heard a heart-wrenching cry, "Ling Tian!" Ling Yan's heart shook and he turned back immediately, only to see a beautiful lady sprinting towards him clumsily with tears all over her face. Despite her sprinting over with all of her strength, she seemed to be getting farther and farther away, and it was just impossible to close the gap. This beautiful lady was Zhou Yanzu. Witnessing Zhou Yanzu collapse onto the ground in despair and her voice fading away gradually, Ling Tian felt his heart take and was about to shout out. However, the scene in front of him transformed completely with a blur, and a gentle voice called out to him, "Young noble." He then saw Ling Chen's resolute yet gentle appearance drifting towards him slowly. After that, Yu Bingyan and Li Zhu appeared behind her and looked at him silently with gentleness in their eyes. While they did not say a single word, their willingness to die with him could be clearly seen in their eyes. They were filled with resolution and had no complaints or regrets. Ling Tian let out a smile and suppressed the sorrow in his heart. At this moment, anything he said was meaningless. Thus, Ling Tian waved his hands helplessly and said dimly, "Come if you want and leave if you want." The four ladies immediately burst out in satisfied and surprised smiles as they gathered closer to Ling Tian. Ling Tian felt his heart ache and felt an empty feeling in his heart. However, at this moment an unspeakable happiness and satisfaction undeniably flooded his heart. How would the unconscious Ling Tian be able to know that the parting words he said to his loved ones would be treated as the mysterious truth of the heavenly laws by justice? If we are able to meet in our next life, I will definitely not let all of you down. Ling Tian made a vow in his heart before turning around and continuing walking down the path in front of him. Right at this moment, an indescribable pain assaulted Ling Tian's consciousness, and even with Ling Tian's stunning will, he was actually unable to bear with the pain. At this moment, it was as though his body and soul were being sliced apart piece by piece, with countless types of torture equipment being used on them. Ling Tian's brows were furrowed as he clenched his teeth and let out soft groans. All of a sudden, darkness filled his vision, and both the rainbow-colored clouds as well as the glowing road disappeared. The only thing left was the endless pain assaulting his body and soul. Letting out a painful groan, Ling Tian slowly opened his eyes and felt as though his whole body was on fire. His innards felt as though they were burning in the flames of hell, and even his soul was convulsing and churning. This intense pain, that was capable of destroying the will of any individual, poured into Ling Tian's consciousness. While the degree of his injuries was within his expectations, when Ling Tian used his internal vision to view the condition of his body, he clicked his tongue in shock. It was truly severe to the extreme. His meridians were just short of exploding completely. If his meridians were to be completely destroyed, his whole body would be rendered immobile and he would be no different from a cripple. The most frustrating thing was the fact that up until now, Ling Tian still didn't know what the cause of this tribulation was. He was completely clueless and still unable to make heads or tails of what had happened. However, he almost lost his life due to his ignorance. Ling Tian let out a self-mocking smile as he thought, entering into cultivation deviation without even knowing the reason behind it, I am probably the first in the world, right? Isn't my luck just too good? Or am I just too unlucky? To think that I would meet with something like this with my dog's luck. Looking at his current physical appearance, a wave of helplessness overwhelmed Ling Tian again. He was stark naked without a single piece of clothes on his body, as though he was a newly born infant. At the same time, his whole body was covered with bloodstains and there were at least 100 scars on his body. Apart from his face, which he had controlled despite the intense pain, there was not a single part of his body intact from his neck down. Ling Tian let out a bitter laugh and tried moving his body, but immediately felt a bone-piercing pain. Taking in a breath of cold air, Ling Tian realized that all of the blood that had flowed out of his body had already dried up on the rocky ground and stuck his damaged body to the ground. The moment he moved, he felt as though he was being skinned alive. While his body could not move, Ling Tian knew that he was absolutely safe. As long as nothing happened to his horrifying internals, then he would definitely not face any danger. Before he went unconscious, Ling Tian could clearly see Justice looking at him as though he was a treasure. With Justice around, even if he was surrounded by 1,000,000 soldiers, he would definitely be alright. Chapter 504, Turning Peril into Safety. Ling Tian had absolute confidence that Justice would not attack him at this moment. This was mutual appreciation between peerless experts. Shutting his eyes and taking a few deep breaths, Ling Tian felt an acute pain in his throat and he said with exasperation, "Are you done watching? Are you getting pleasure from seeing a naked guy? If you are done watching, quickly come and help me. Are you really that happy to see me suffer? The moment Ling Tian regained consciousness, Justice had already noticed it and could not help but lament in his heart, this fellow is Ling Tian indeed. Even after taking a spin in the gates of hell, he is still able to maintain such calmness. Apart from the time where he let you an unbearable groan after just waking up, he actually did not let out a second cry of pain. Just what kind of willpower would be required for that? Just when he was silently praising Ling Tian in his heart, he never expected to hear Ling Tian's sarcastic comments. Justice frowned and looked at Ling Tian with a tinge of dissatisfaction. What does this guy take me for? He actually dares to order me around now? In the world today, who would have the guts to order me around like that? He is truly too bold. It seems like the pain he suffered isn't enough. Taking 2 steps forward, he grabbed onto Ling Tian's hair with one of his hand and began spanking Ling Tian's ass with his other hand. With every single spanking landing right on his wounds, Ling Tian took in a breath of cold air and his eyes narrowed. Just when he was about to start cursing, he heard a tearing sound as though the bark of a tree was being ripped apart from the trunk. Justice pulled Ling Tian up mercilessly and the ripping sound was from Ling Tian's skin being ripped off from the stony ground. Even his flesh was forcibly ripped out. Ling Tian, who was just about to let out a curse, began hissing in pain and almost fainted on the spot. His whole body immediately broke out in cold sweat and everywhere his sweat touched, it was as though the 18 levels of hell was trickling down his body. FK. Ling Tian roared with anger, "Sai! Who are you trying to kill? Are you going to be a little more obedient now?" Justice looked at Ling Tian in the eyes and said gently, "Why don't I put you back down? I will respect your opinion." "Don't." Ling Tian immediately changed his attitude. Being on the losing end, he had no choice but to lower his head. Is the #1 expert in the world, the martial order medallion owner of Beyond Heavens, such a narrow-minded person? Would a senior like you stoop down to the level of torturing someone? He. Say. You. Ling Tian was instead greeted with Justice's hands roaming around his wounds and replying with his smile, "Flattery is useless against me." Ling Tian was enraged. "I say, Justice, even if you are jealous about this young noble's assets, is there a need for this? A big grown man like you hugging my pure and untainted body. Don't you think that there is something wrong with this?" Justice stared at Ling Tian coldly. "If you dare to spout another word from now on, I will definitely cut it off." The words of the martial order medallion owner are no joke. Ling Tian immediately shut his mouth tightly. This killing maniac in front of him definitely wasn't joking and he would definitely carry out everything he said. If Justice is going to cut off Ling Tian's, regardless of whether or not he will be able to take his revenge in future, Ling Tian would only be able to train in the Sunflower Manual in the future. Justice dragged Ling Tian into the tent, and Ling Tian saw Zhou Yanzu lying on the ground palely with a trace of blood at the corner of her lips. He could not help but let out a cry of surprise. "What happened to her?" "She suffered a shock thinking that you had died, but her life isn't in danger." Ling Tian replied succinctly and heartlessly, "Where is the medicine?" "In the bag over there." Ling Tian grumbled, "You actually do not carry any medicine with you when roaming the pugilistic world?" "I will never need to use it," Justice said calmly and took out the top-quality medicine that Ling Tian had prepared. Ling Tian let out a bitter laugh. Even with his arrogance, he did not dare to roam the pugilistic world without medicine. However, with Justice's peerless martial arts, the need of medicine was far too rare. Even if he needed to use it, it would definitely be for someone else. Just when he was about to scold himself for being slow-witted, he suddenly felt his body being thrown and a cool feeling on his back. Justice had already begun to tend to his wounds. Justice's actions were extremely swift, and when Ling Tian's body was still in midair, Justice had already swiftly applied the medicine on more than 10 wounds on Ling Tian's back. While Justice did not bring medicine along with him, his medicinal application technique was definitely top-notch. At the same time, the medicine which Ling Tian had prepared was a secret formula from his previous life. While it couldn't be considered a saint medicine that is the best in the world, Ling Tian immediately felt a wave of comfort all over his body with the pain subsiding slightly. However, he suddenly felt his muscles cramp up as a wave of intense pain assaulted his body, which was already in pain. The sudden wave of intense pain made Ling Tian almost tear up. Justice hung Ling Tian's body in midair while he used his other hand to apply the medicine all around Ling Tian's body. Being assaulted by both internal and external pain together with being caught off guard, Ling Tian finally cried out in pain as he glared at Justice, who was gloating at his misfortune. "This daddy here will duel you. You bst road. What are you doing? I truly look forward to that." Justice threw Ling Tian on the blanket and completely did not look like he was dealing with a wounded person. He then threw the bottle of medicine to the side and said unsympathetically, "There wasn't enough medicine. It ran out." Ling Tian's eyes almost popped out of its sockets. "Boss. More than half of my wounds aren't covered yet, and you finished it all? This daddy here is confident that my medicinal knowledge is peerless in the world. I have applied medicine to all the critical areas, and the remaining parts are superficial wounds. I also stopped the bleeding of your wounds with my inner chi, and you will definitely not die. Just bear with it. Your wounds will recover in less than 7 days." Justice spat out these words and left. Profanities flowed out from Ling Tian's mouth like an unending river, and despite his cursing, Ling Tian also realized that his injuries were truly much better. Justice's medicinal prowess was something that even Ling Tian would admit his inferiority to. Damn it, is this old brat the #1 expert in the world or the #1 divine doctor? With such outstanding medicinal knowledge, he actually does not carry with him any medicine. Damn it. A short while later, Justice's head stuck into the tent again as he lamented, "You are truly the #1 scholar who shocked the world. After cursing for a full 5 minutes, you actually did not repeat a single phrase. Even with such serious injuries, you aren't even panting at all. I cannot help but admire you for something else. This daddy can scold you for a full day and night. You cur." Ling Tian lost his rationality from anger. A dragon would truly be bullied by a shrimp in shallow waters, and a tiger will be bullied by a cat when it leaves the mountain. A cat which obtains victory will celebrate like a tiger, and a leg feather of a phoenix can't be compared to a chicken. Justice chuckled while standing at the opening of the tent and looking at Ling Tian babbling on. He took out a small bottle from his embrace. After pouring out a white powder from it and tasting it, he asked Ling Tian with an amiable smile, "This is salt, right?" Ling Tian's mouth hung open as he looked at the small bottle in Justice's hand without daring to say anything. With regards to Justice's idea that he had not said, Ling Tian naturally understood it. "At least you are tactful." Justice's expression suddenly turned cold. "Tend to your wounds properly, I have something to ask you later." He then let down the folds of the tent before walking out. All of a sudden, Ling Tian seemed to have thought of something and shouted out, "FK, Justice. You should at least give me something to govern myself with, right? There is still a lady beside me." However, not a single sound could be heard from outside the tent, and Justice had already disappeared. Ling Tian looked at his stark naked body helplessly and began muttering under his breath. It wouldn't matter if he didn't think about it, but after thinking about it, young noble Ling's dragon began to grow active again. This made Ling Tian completely dumbfounded. "You are going to be so energetic even at such a time? Do you really want my life?" Currently, there were only 3 parts of Ling Tian's body which were still mobile: his mouth, his eyes, and little young noble Ling. Ling Tian prayed in his heart, towards Buddha, towards Jesus. He prayed to every single deity which he knew. "Ms. Zhou, since it is so rare for you to be unconscious, please stay unconscious for a while more. If you are going to get up at this time, I will not have the face to face anyone else in future. It also wouldn't be good for you either." Right when he was thinking about the thing which he feared most currently, Miss Zhou began to stir. Ling Tian rolled his eyes and was completely helpless. "Alright then, if you aren't going to remain unconscious, I shall be the one unconscious." Young noble Ling then fainted in his birthday suit with his face bright red, leaving behind an upright pillar. As Zhou Yanzu gradually regained consciousness, the first thing she thought about was Ling Tian's death. She struggled to get up and was about to burst out crying. However, before she could cry, she saw Ling Tian lying down by her side and her tears immediately turned into joy and surprise. Following that, she gasped in embarrassment and bashfulness. She obviously saw Ling Tian's tall pillar, and as a lady born in an aristocratic family, she naturally had an understanding of such things. After which, she shouted out in shock, obviously noticing the horrible wounds on Ling Tian's body. Ling Tian then noticed the surroundings around him turning silent before hearing a silent sobbing by his side. Then, a pair of gentle hands stroked his body gently and carefully as though she was afraid of causing him pain. A rustling sound could then be heard, followed by a ripping sound as though Zhou Yanzu ripped something apart and was looking for something. Then, her footsteps could be heard, and she walked to Ling Tian's side. Ling Tian then heard Zhou Yanzu's hesitant and shy voice, "Thankfully he's unconscious." Just when Ling Tian was wondering why Zhou Yanzu would say that, he felt Zhou Yanzu wrapping up his wounds and her soft lips moving around his wounds to apply a cool medicinal paste on his body. Throughout the whole process, Ling Tian actually didn't feel any pain at all despite his serious wounds. It could be seen just how gentle Zhou Yanzu was. She could be said to be cautious to the extreme. Of course, Zhou Yanzu's treatment methods could not be compared to Justice in terms of effect. Justice's treatment method was only concerned about saving Ling Tian's life, and he could not be bothered about whether or not Ling Tian felt pain or how much pain Ling Tian felt. While Justice's treatment method was also extremely mystical and gentle, if Ling Tian had a choice, he would not be willing to allow another man to touch him all over. Although he might end up dying if he wasn't touched. The injuries on Ling Tian's front were all taken care of carefully by Zhou Yanzu, even his thighs, abdomen, and even toes. Zhou Yanzu used her flower-like lips to gently and meticulously tend to all of Ling Tian's wounds. In order to prevent Ling Tian from feeling any pain, she even cleaned Ling Tian's wounds with her lips. Ling Tian was covered in blood all over and was even stained by mud and grass in some places. His body was truly extremely dirty, with his flesh being exposed and scars all over his body. Ling Tian truly could not imagine just how Zhou Yanzu was able to do this. Just how was she able to do that? Growing up leading a pampered life, how would this little princess of the #1 financial magnate accomplish all of these without an extremely deep love for Ling Tian? Even among couples who spent all of their life together, how many of them would be able to treat their other half with such care and concern? This pure love of hers was just too rare. Ling Tian was extremely moved in his heart, but also had a tinge of guilt. If he was still going to be suspicious of a lady like this who was willing to treat him in such a manner, then he was truly worse than a swine. After this round of Zhou Yanzu treating his wounds, Ling Tian came to a conclusion in his heart. No matter what and no matter how tough the journey in the future will be, this woman is mine for sure. I must definitely treat her well, dote on her, love her and cherish her. Under Zhou Yanzu's meticulous care, Ling Tian, who was originally pretending to be unconscious, gradually felt a wave of sleepiness gradually overwhelming him. After finally being unable to bear with the enticement of the sleep demon, Ling Tian fell asleep gradually. This incident had strained his usually powerful spirit to the extreme. After fighting with pain for such a long time, his last shred of strength was spent and he felt a wave of comfort in Zhou Yanzu's embrace, falling asleep comfortably. Justice sat down quietly outside with the heaven splitter in one hand and the mysterious jade pendant in his other hand. Studying it quietly under the sunlight, his brows were furrowed, and even after studying it for a long while, he could not see through the mystery of the jade pendant still. Letting out a sigh, he put down the jade pendant. Looking at the tent silently, a smile could be seen on his face with a slightly complicated look. While Ling Tian may not know about the condition of his own body currently, how would Justice, who was a martial arts grandmaster, not be able to understand the condition of Ling Tian's body? After this incident, while Ling Tian's cultivation may not increase greatly, he definitely received a great benefit. Even though his injuries were so frightening. In truth, after Justice's treatment, Ling Tian's injuries were no longer an issue and were instead a blessing in disguise. After Ling Tian's meridians were almost shattered, while he had to endure an intense pain that no one else would be able to endure, Ling Tian had also gained benefits that no one else would be able to gain. At that moment, Ling Tian's meridians had expanded to an unprecedented width under the explosive pressure from last night. Even the width of Justice's meridians couldn't be compared to Ling Tian.
Thank you for your continued following. Please support us by subscribe to encourage our continued creation. And press the bell to notify new chapter from us. Thank you.